So I was getting ready for a workout, and my mind was just in a stream of thoughts. And the Lord, I was thinking about how my prayers have changed over the years in content and quality. And the Lord said, tell them about your prayers. And I said, okay. So I came out here, and it's cold and my hoodie broke, so I can't zipper it anymore, but my cat ran up. He's very vocal, so if you hear him meowing, he's just gonna be my hype man for this video. If I don't trip on him. If you've read the book I wrote called Seek Ye This Jesus, there's a lot in there about prayer. And you may have heard me say before that one reason it took so long for me to write that book is that as I was writing the best I knew about a topic that I felt like was worth something, for the purposes I wrote that book, the Lord would teach me more, and then I had to do it. I had to change so that I did it before I could write about it with sincerity from experience. And so there's a lot about prayer in that book. And there's a time where I'd pray for hours a day. Then I got up early to do it, and I'd meditate over the scriptures. I'd read them and think about them and ask questions and get answers, and I still do a lot of that. But I don't really pray much anymore. That might be a shocker for you to hear. I said a prayer this morning, and I think the last time I can remember praying was weeks ago. And I truly believe that's what the Lord wants me to do. So that might come as a shocker. So here we go. Let me explain, and maybe you find use for this. So my prayers before, other than the length, I guess in topic, they're pretty similar to what you might expect. So maybe I'll go through each of these things and say why I don't do this anymore. Because basically what has happened is that every time I try to pray, the Lord interrupts me and he tells me to go do something else, which I do. And so it's kind of like, you know, the ceremonial put down a knee in football games. I don't know football enough to say why they do this, but they get the ball and they just take a knee. And it's almost like that's how far I get in most prayers. And I've got the next order and I just go do. And so I used to pray, let's see some examples. I used to pray and I'd say, Lord, I don't know what to do about this or that. And sometimes he'd tell me what to do, and sometimes he'd teach me what to do through the things that happened after the prayer. And now I don't have that question, because if I'm in a situation, oh, cat claws on my leg, I know what to do. I know what to do, and I know what the Lord would have me do. And so if I were to not know, then I would ask. And the only time I ask now is it's something like, Lord, you know all the reasons I'm doing this, and I think this is, well, I strongly believe this is what you want. I have no reason to doubt. But I'm just checking in because I'm an idiot. And if I'm wrong, here's your chance. Please help me see what's right. And then I go, and I do, because I want to check in and not be like the ancient Israelites who had the spies show up and they were commanded to kill that whole population, but these people pretended they were from a far off country and they didn't check in with God and they got bamboozled. So I don't really pray so much about what to do anymore, because I already know, and the Spirit tells me in the moment. But if I lack understanding about something or total confidence in what I'm doing, I will pray and I will ask him. I used to pray a lot of prayers of gratitude. Cat, quit clawing me. I used to pray a lot of prayers of gratitude. And the Lord, He began to tell me, if you really appreciate this, then the way to show me is to go share it with others. Go live it and help others. And so I said, okay. And so every time I pray a prayer of gratitude and He tells me that, I just go and do it. This morning I prayed because I felt overwhelming gratitude because of an exchange I had with my sister. And I realized that I hadn't really thought about how grateful I am for that in a while. And I started to pray, thanking Him for that and all the ins and outs of that relationship over the years. But very quickly, it turned into an acknowledgement of His wisdom in the way He arranges everything, knowing exactly how things need to be the best that they can be. And then very quickly got to basically the only prayer I offer these days, which is to beg Him with all my heart to not shield me from anything that would be for the benefit of the world and for His glory. And I beg Him that He put me into places where no matter how much it hurts or how long it lasts, that somehow, somewhere, somebody can gain a little more awareness of how much He loves us and how good He is. And that's something that I do pray about, because there are things in this life for which our consent is required. And so I regularly renew my consent to suffer for the benefit of others. And I beg Him not to cut that short. What else did I used to pray about? I used to pray for miracles for people. And since then, He's taught me a lot more about the mechanisms of those miracles. And so I exercise the same faith, well, even greater faith than I would in praying and asking for something, not understanding, by living according to the understanding. What else? So many of those miracles, and that was the first prior prayer in a long time that I can remember, that was weeks ago, was I was praying for a man who was in a tight spot, a life-threatening tight spot. And when he told me about it, the Lord showed me more than what the man had said. And I saw a bit of the future and what was at stake. And I offered up my life. For his. And the Lord gave me what I asked for. But that wasn't a prayer in the normal sense. I was just using those mechanisms of miracles that I told you about. Part of them. It's a big stack of things. So yeah, whenever I had tried to pray, this is a long time now, about how tough things are, I haven't done that in a very, 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 very long time. Because every time I did it, the Lord would show me more of what He went through for us in a very, very vivid way. And I got to the point where I didn't need to see more of that to believe him. And so I stopped praying about how hard things were, and I just asked him to help me do it in a way that helped people see his love and his goodness more than they would. And switch to the other prayer I already told you about, that he wouldn't take it away. And whenever I prayed to know what I should do in a certain situation, I kept finding that he'd remind me that he had already told me. And he said, "What are you doing? Go do what I told you. Don't ask the same question again. You've got standing orders. Go do what you were told." And so I just do it. And the second I run out of the next step, the second I even turn the slightest way to say, "Lord, what's next?" I've already got the next thing. So some of the next things have been very large, like these books. These books have been, they defy description. The process defies description. But as I've had questions, because I run out of the next thing, because every day, every moment I work on these, the next thing is right in front of me. It's so hard to describe, but I can see it. It's like the words stand out on the page, and I know what to do. And it's work. It's the hardest work I've ever done. It's harder than any. It's not just. It's not just more difficult in quality. It's more difficult in kind. It's a different thing. It's a different thing, but it's just like step by step. It's like walking a path or crawling inch by inch. And I know the next thing I need to do, and I do it. And I know the next thing I need to do, and I do it. But anytime it has been anywhere close to not knowing the next thing, the second my mind even recognizes it, I see the next thing again. And so, once it dawned on me a few years ago that I wouldn't have forever. My kids would not be home forever. And it dawned on me through observation of others whose kids were older in a very visceral way. I realized that there would come a day where I would regret not if I hadn't done everything I could to spend every moment with my kids in the way that would help them the most in the future once they weren't at home. And so I was racking my brain because I was tormented by the fact that I felt like I was a slave to work. And I had discovered this value that I couldn't have because my time was in so many ways not my own, because of, you have to feed your kids in order to have the kids to spend time with the kids. But you spend all your time feeding your kids, you don't have any time to spend with them. And the Lord put me on a path where I started to find ways of spending more time with them without reducing my performance on the things I needed to do to feed them. So, by merging together how I spent time with them and the work I needed to do, I discovered not quite 40 hours a week, but a whole lot of hours a week that I could spend with my kids that I wasn't spending with them. And actually, not just on kind of, maybe meaningful but less than useful recreation, but actual practical things that they could value, that would impart value for their lives. And like that, my prayer life, once you dedicate yourself to the Lord and you learn enough about him that you can see how his will touches every little piece of your life, every minute of your day, you walk in prayer. You worship in spirit and in truth. And the more you do that, the more traditional prayer ceases to have something unique to offer. And in many ways, you get a lot more out of life lived in prayer than you do prayer about life. And then the things that remain that need to be addressed in explicit prayer, it's because they can't be addressed in just life. And so that would be my answer to why don't you pray much anymore? I'd say, well, I don't pray much anymore because I pray all the time. Because my life is a prayer. When I pray and I say, Lord, I want to thank you, he says, then go and live in a life dedicated to giving to others what I've given you. You show others what I've shown you. Proclaim on the housetops what I've whispered in your ear. And I say, okay. And, I go to ask what to do, but he's already told me what to do. And so on and so forth. So, when we see the word pray in the scriptures, it doesn't mean kneel down and close your eyes and talk or think. That's a piece of it. It's not the fullness of that idea. And so I invite you to pray more in your lives through making your life more of a prayer.